Oh, microphone there. I need to adjust my seat here. There we go. Hello there. Welcome to Noon Prayer Watch. Oh, this is kind of tall. Sorry. It's Friday. The weekend is here, so Shabbat Shalom, and I hope y'all all had a great week and that you'll have a great weekend as well. This is Jacob coming to you from Osaka, Japan. Thanks for tuning in or catching up on the replay. That's totally fine too. I'm a big replay person myself, big advocate of it. So, moving back to a sort of a series that I started a while back called East Asia Analysis. We are in part 4, and we are going to be talking about the nation of Malaysia. Maybe you don't know a lot about it. Malaysia isn't as big as some of the other nations that I've talked about, but it is significant, and it's also very historical. So we're going to go ahead and talk about that stuff today. Let me first of all, let's pull up my map. Here we go. So you guys know where it is. Throw the map up there. Okay, I'm down here in the bottom corner. So here I am in Japan. I always like to start with Japan so you can see where I am, where I'm coming from. Osaka, here I am. I'm in there somewhere. So we're going to go out. Japan's over here. We're going to go all the way south. You know, we talked about Korea. We talked about China. Talked about Philippines. We're going to slide on over to the southwest here to the Philippines, and we have Malaysia. Malaysia has, I'll tell you how many islands they have later, but there's 2 main islands, and it shares like the sort of like a, I don't know if you want to call this an island, but it shares a what is this, a peninsula? I'm trying to remember my elementary geography lessons here. It shares this with Malaysia here, and then it has another part of this big island over here as well. And there's some other smaller ones all around. I'll get into more of those stats in a second. But yeah, this is kind of the shape, kind of an interesting shape. You got 2 big pieces here separated. And that's going to be important because when we talk about how religion works in Malaysia, this divide between the 2 main, parts of the islands is significant. But if you notice, Philippines is right here, and it's not too far. A lot of these islands belong to the Philippines, and so it shares a maritime border with the Philippines. The language is, I talked about this a couple weeks ago. They're connected. Of course, Philippines has, their language has so many different influences from so many different places, but one of those places is the Malay languages and the Malay people here. Okie dokie. So let's get into, got a lot of stuff all over here. Let's get into what we were doing. Why did I pick Malaysia? Like when I started this series, I was praying, like what I asked, basically the Lord led me to share, like focus on 10 different nations in East Asia and kind of talk about them. And this is one of them. And Malaysia is significant because, like here in Japan, where I live, a lot of Malay people, I'm assuming they're Malay, because Malaysia is very diverse ethnically. But a lot of people come to places like Japan to work in the factories. In Japan, we have a labor shortage here, and so we can't get enough workers to do a lot of things. Some of you might have seen in the news, Japan had, I'm not Japanese, of course, but Japan had a very sharp decrease in the population. Once again, this story comes up about once a year because the population is going downhill. And so the population shrunk by 800,000 people. And again, not to get into that whole issue, but that's because people aren't having children, and also people are living longer. And so that creates a big disparity, and it's going to create problems unless we can get more people in here, younger people, to work in the country, pay into the taxes and, social systems and everything like that. Otherwise, it's going to be tough. That's just how it is. That's how the math works out. Um, so we have a lot of Malaysian people in Japan working. I'm in an apartment complex, and downstairs I have a family from Malaysia, and I talk with them sometimes. They're really nice people, but they're moving around all over the world, working all over the world. And so I've talked about this before, but when we have rich nations like Japan, America, there's obviously going to be a lot of immigration to these nations because people, they're seeking better opportunities for themselves, for their families. And so this is an opportunity for the kingdom to be in a safe country that has freedom of religion and there's no persecution from the government. We have an opportunity to reach these people, impact them, and then they will go back to their nations and impact them as well. We, of course, can go to these nations ourselves, us being missionaries of any nation, not just America or Japan. But it's a lot. It's a big deal when the people themselves take the gospel back to their country. That's actually how I haven't really talked about this, but that's how the Christianity and like from the American Civil War period on. That's kind of how it came back into Japan. It was getting big here back in the day in the 1600s. It reached Japan and it was getting really big, but the government decided they didn't like it, and so they clamped it down and essentially wiped it out, except for a very small minority. And it was kind of non-existent here back until the mid 1800s when Japan started opening up to the rest of the world. But what would happen is Japanese guys would go sneak on ships. They would leave the country, go to America, get saved, and then they come back to Japan and bring the gospel. And, you know, we always talk about how like Japan is such a small percentage of Christians. There's a lot of, it's less than 1%. There's a lot of reasons for that. But one big reason that a lot of people don't realize is that it hasn't really had a long time to grow. Um, Basically since the end of World War II. That was the only time that freedom has really been here to grow churches, grow the kingdom, and all that kind of stuff. So opportunities abound. Opportunities abound. So let's go ahead and get into some of the nitty gritty about Malaysia. So I actually have, I'm going to turn this off. I have some stats. I have some charts. So the population is actually, I'm going to do this. I have this cool idea I'm going to share. I found this, there's a channel called Scenic Scenes, and it'll play some video of Malaysia. You can kind of see what's going on there. Here we go. Let's throw that up there. I'll throw that over there. Okay. I'm going to read some stats here for you. Population of Malaysia is 33 million. 33 million people. A lot of people on some small islands. They have 878 islands. So less people, less islands in the Philippines from last week. But they have on these islands 137 native languages. That's just a little bit less than the Philippines. But basically, I'm bringing all this up to say that this country is very diverse. There's a lot of different kinds of people, a lot of different languages. So the language per capita, if you want to call it that, is a lot higher than the Philippines. And this, of course, there's a language everybody shares, but you have your own language. And so when it comes to translating the Bible, talking to people, communicating with them, you got a big task here to reach all these different people in order to communicate them in all these different ways. But the main languages in Malaysia are, of course, the native language, Malay, English, Chinese, and Tamil. Tamil is a southern language from southern India, Sri Lanka. And if we can go back to my scenic stuff, if we can go back to the map, kind of all over the place here. Maybe you kind of already figured this out. Malaysia is by the sea. And not only that, it is situated in a very auspicious place. So India is not too far from here. There's actually some islands where some Tamil people who are from the southern India, you can see Tamil Nadu here, they live over here. And so their language, of course, is uh, spoken there by these people. And so traders, they Arab traders, they would, I don't know if you can see my mouse here. Probably can't. But they basically go along the coast, go to different cities along the way, India, Bangladesh, Burma, or Myanmar, if you want to call it that, Indonesia. And so there's a lot of trade going around, this area. And so that led to a lot of diversity in the people and the languages and the religions and all of that. Eventually, Malaysia would be colonized by England. Did I mention that already? I think I might have mentioned that. And so even today, like the flag, if you look at their flag, it's similar to America, except instead of the 50 stars, it has a star and a crescent representing Islam, but it has the red, white stripes. And that's actually that's a British flag. Kind of interesting that America uses that flag, despite the history with England. But because they've been colonized by England for so long, a lot of their governments and a lot of their laws and systems are based on the English system. And also, English is one of their primary languages that they speak in this nation. Oops, I didn't put my map up again. I did it again. Sorry for that. Gotta remember to turn it back on. I'm over here pointing around. And so when it comes to religion, a lot of religion from India, China came here because they're so close and it's easy access by the sea. A lot of Chinese people came down from, China, and a lot of Indian people came from over here. And then, of course, there's the natives from this area as well. Okay, so let's see here. Let's talk about the religions. Now, freedom of religion, what's the situation? It's kind of sticky. Freedom of religion is written into the Constitution. They're a modern nation. But the government, of course, the culture heavily favors Islam. Let's go ahead and pull up my chart here. Window, can I find it? Here we go. Throw it up. Here's the chart. It might be easier than me just reading off statistics. Let's do it this way. Oh, that's not going to work. That'll work for now. All right, so I took this from Wikipedia. This is a few years old, but basically Islam is 64% of the population. Buddhism is 18.5%. Christianity is 9%. It is a minority, but it is not an insignificant minority. It's got quite a few people here. Hinduism, of course, is 5.9%, and everybody else is this small piece of the pie up here. And these religions basically fall along ethnic lines. And what that means is, like, the Malay people are Islam, Chinese people are Buddhist, people from India are Hindu, and Christianity kind of has a cut of quite a few different people. So I have another chart here. Let's find that. Where did it go? I found this really interesting. Throw that up here. Okay, so this is what it looks like as far as like the area and then the majority of the religion in the area. You have these main islands. You have on the left side and on the right side. So the left side is, of course, 50% plus Muslim majority. And on the right side, the far right side, is also Muslim majority, and which is interesting because it's connected to southern Philippines, which also has a lot of Islam there. But this area here, this blue area, can I zoom in? No, I can't. Or maybe I can. Can I zoom in? Yeah, here we go. It's falling out. I'm not gonna do that. Sorry. This area is 50% Christian, which is interesting because only 9% of the population is Christian. And yet this whole swath area has a lot of Christians here. And I think that's interesting. It's separated from the government. The government's on the western island. And so there's kind of a space there to give some breathing room. I think that's not an insignificant point there. That was very important in the development of America. We had oceans between England and their government, and that helped lead to independence. Not that I'm saying that's what's going to happen here in Malaysia. I'm not well versed enough to make such a claim, but yeah. So when we talk about the Christians not in Malaysia, let me throw this back up here. Okay, get some background video going on here. Thanks to Scenic Scenes. So we have it's pretty interesting. We have 50% Catholic and then 40% Protestant, 10% everything else. I'm not sure exactly where evangelicalism falls along those lines, but yeah, we have a pretty even split there, almost 50-50 Catholic and non-Catholic. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this. Hinduism is 5.9%. I forgot. I did mention it when we did the chart. So Christianity, the history of Christianity in Malaysia is quite interesting. Reading this little blurb here, it is claimed, it is claimed that early Christian presence in the Malay archipelago can be traced back to Arab Christian traders from the Arabian Peninsula who heard the gospel from Peter the apostle in Jerusalem, as mentioned in Acts 2, as well as those evangelized by Paul's ministries in Arabia, as mentioned in Galatians 1:17. And St. Thomas, there's other different people like St. Thomas and such who influence people. And then those traders, of course, fulfilling the Great Commission, went to places like Malaysia and brought the gospel with them. A lot of people don't, the prior to 600 AD, when Islam rose, the religious landscape of like the Arab nations, Saudi Arabia today, Yemen, was very diverse. It had a lot of Jewish people, it had a lot of Christians, and of course the pagan religions as well. And so there was free movement, and these guys would go around and share the gospel and all that kind of stuff. We know they went all the way to India, and yeah, they went all the way. The historians claim that they made it all the way to Malaysia, which is really far. By the way, Malaysia is like at the bottom of the line, kind of where Singapore is, I guess. It is the southernmost point of the Eurasian continent. Eurasia is like from Malaysia all the way to France and Germany, and so it's the southernmost point in the entire world. And it is a corner of the earth that some Christians took the gospel to. Okay, and so there is, of course, missionary activity over the years. And then when the colonization of England hit Malaysia when was that? Around the 1800s. Yeah. They, of course, a lot of different denominations are coming in and going out. It's very diverse, very kind of like everybody's getting in here because again, Malaysia is really easy to access. It's on the along the way of trading routes, and easy for people to come, people to go. And so that's why different religions have taken over this nation in different times. As I've mentioned so many times before, Hinduism and Buddhism are very old. They started before the time of Christ. And so people sharing these religions traveled to these places and, they became popular. Eventually, of course, Islam took over Asia, and Islam was actually, it was from Arabia all the way to Malaysia, and it even ruled India for a time, but the Hinduism rose up and kind of split it in half. I'm not going to bring up the map. I talked about that a long time ago, though. So, yeah, very diverse, lots of different people here. So when I was researching this, it's a little bit difficult for me to talk about Malaysia because I've never been there. Well, unlike the other nations that I mentioned, that I've covered in the past. But I'm doing my best, doing some research and seeing as best I can just from the data available to us out here in the public. So I was praying, like, God, what exactly needs to happen here? Like, what are some of the strongholds? What are some of the situations here? Because it's like, when we talk about Christianity in Malaysia, there is some resistance, heavy resistance from the government. It doesn't seem to be as strong as other places. But there's a stat here that says in 2023, the country was ranked the 43rd worst country in the world to be a Christian. But that was only in the western side. Remember, there's two islands, and so the western side, where it's heavily Muslim, is really rough to be a Christian there. However, on the eastern island, it's not at all, obviously, because that's the majority religion there, despite it again being only 9% of the population. And so that area of the country seems to be very diverse, and people can um, get along for the most part. The stats of basically the breakdown of the Christians in Malaysia are, it's like almost 60% native people here. I'm not again sure of all the specific ethnicities of the nation, but 26% of them are Chinese, 5% of them are, or 4% of them are Indian, and everybody else is in there, including non-citizens. And so when we talk about the government, or the freedom of religion, I guess I could say, in Malaysia, again, I said earlier that religion kind of follows along ethnic lines. So if you're a native Malaysian, you practice Islam, and by law, you're required to be part of that religion. You cannot convert to anything else. And so they practice, of course, Sharia law, and they practice Sunni Islam. They have restricted all their forms of Islam, and yeah, you have to, when it comes to fasting, when it comes to praying according to Islamic practice, you got to do it, or you're going to get in trouble, going to go to jail, going to get punished. And so they're very strict, and they're very controlling over their own people, and they won't let them change. They won't let them do any other sort of religion. You can't do that. That's forbidden. Remember, apostasy in Islam, apostasy is the worst sin, and they are heavily punished. People are heavily punished when they again, apostasy means you leave the faith, so to speak, and so they are punished for that. It can be also, of course, that can lead to the death penalty as well. So they can be really strict, and that's something we need to pray about. There is a significant group of Christians there, and so we need to pray. One of the prayer points that I have, I'm moving into my final section here. One of the prayer points that I felt we should pray for is, of course, freedom for the Malaysian people, for the Malay people there. There seems to be more freedom if you're not Malay, which again is the main native group. If you're not Malay, then you have a little bit more freedom with what you can believe in and how you can live your life. But if you are this group, the main group, you're very restricted, and it can be very harsh for you if you don't go along with what the culture forces you to do. So we got to pray for freedom in the nation. We need to pray that the church in the nation will continue to expand, continue to advance through ethnic lines. We shouldn't, religion, what we believe shouldn't be predicated upon what group we belong to, what group we were born into, should be predicated upon faith. And so we just pray that the faith of the people grow, and that they can continue to expand the church and break through these ethnic lines. And, you can't paint everybody with a broad stroke of a brush. There is a lot of diversity in who believes in all that kind of stuff, but we need more diversity. We need every group of people in this nation believing in Jesus. We pray that the saints in the nation, or that come and help the nation, they will be protected from oppression from the government and from the culture, and that the Holy Spirit will lead them to be overcomers in their nation, expand the kingdom, take over so to speak, spiritually. We pray, and then of course that this nation, God will use it. That the kingdom in the nation will unlock the potential of this nation, and that the kingdom will expand and influence and tear down the strongholds holding this nation back. Because again, East Asia is where most of the people in the world are, and as these nations develop and become a little bit wealthier, people have more opportunities. The people from these nations are going to go out and they're going to go to different nations. They're going to go to America. They're going to go to Europe. And we're going to have to meet them and live with them and get along with them. This is the way the world is going at the moment. We're becoming more globalized. We're becoming more international, and a lot of people have a lot of opinions on that, whether that's good, whether that's bad. We should stop it. We should allow it. But regardless of those opinions, political opinions, what politicians say, it's happening. And um, we need, as Christians, as people who follow Jesus, we need to be on the ball when it comes to reaching out to these people and impacting them. Because again, I've said it so many times, it's a lot easier to do missions when the nations come to you. It's difficult to set your life aside, raise up money, and move to a different nation. Although people should still do that. They should still do that. And if you're one of those people that feels called, you should go ahead and pray about that, talk to your leaders about doing that. But again, people can come to you as well. And so we got to take advantage of this situation because we have a lot more freedom in our nations than these sorts of places. And so it makes our job a lot easier. Okay, so that is all I have for you guys this week. Thank you again for tuning in. Please pray for Malaysia. Please pray that doors will open up. Perhaps me or someone I know or someone you know will have an opportunity to go to such a nation and do something there. It's interesting. Malaysia is right next to a small city state called Singapore. And I believe we're going to have a guest speaker at Christian Center here soon, who Brother Rob Francis. If I'm mistaken about the dates or whatever, I'm sorry, but I believe he's coming next week, and he's probably going to talk about that sort of stuff. Highly recommend his sermons. Some of his sermons I remember them. He was actually one of the first um, guest speakers that came to Christian Center way back in the 90s when Pastor Tim became pastor. He might have been the first. He was one of the first. And he, of course, if you don't know, he was a leader in YWAM, Youth. I'm sorry, I don't remember the full name. Youth on a Mission, Youth World on a Mission. I'm so sorry. We always call it YWAM. Excuse me. I don't have time to look that up, fact check myself there. But he was over that in Singapore, which is south of Malaysia and the main island there. And his stories are really cool how they did missions in that land. And so he's probably going to talk about it. I know he's left that nation a long time ago, that job and that life and everything. I know he still travels around, but please look forward to that next week. He has a lot of interesting things to say. And I remember a couple of times that he's come to Christian Center. I remember his sermons very well, and they impacted me and probably helped me make the decision to come to East Asia as well. But yeah, look forward to that. Thank you guys for watching or catching up on the replay. That's okay too. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and I will see you next time. Shalom and bye.